We're really looking on what is the path to us, and if all of these objects are so old and we don't have any tools, where could these tools have been made? I'm looking at off planet. Only because I can't find anything on planet, there must be something off planet. If we were looking at evidence of what's going on outside of this planet, I would say looking at Mars would be the first place. Now, we sent rovers up to Mars, and a lot of the rovers that are coming up are coming back with a lot of pictures that are interesting, to say the least. Here's Mars here. It's a little darker on this side, but you know, there's that mark on Mars. You know, they call that the Eye of Mars. That's what the guys that used to look at Mars in telescopes in the early days when we first were able to start seeing planets from a distance. Mars had that gash in it, and it would be such a shadow, they would call it the Eye of Mars. And so Mars became known as the planet of war. I think in the Romans they changed the name. Mars became the planet of war. There's the planet that you would see. You know. And so the question is, what are we looking at? And we don't necessarily know what happened on this planet, but what bothers me is that doesn't look like an ordinary asteroid strike. Normally you would see potholes, like big pock marks, you know? Even the moon has that one giant gash on the moon, like something slammed into it, you know, and it made holes. That does not appear to me to be looking like an asteroid strike. That's number one.
Yeah. Looks more like a scrape type of thing.
Yes, a scrape. It looks like something scratched it. Now, honestly, there are some markings up here, and there's some markings up here that look evidence of some external damage, and there's evidence that Mars had an ocean. They're talking about Mars having flowing water today. NASA's actually starting to admit certain things that they would never admit before, and now they're starting to come out with information that we can see too. So there was water on Mars. Where it was and all of that still remains to be determined. They have some low-lying areas, high-lying areas, and they can tell. So this area was most likely flooded, and there was some cataclysmic event. Definitely, this is not something that doesn't demonstrate there was something that happened. Some major destruction took place. So what caused that remains to be seen. However, my investigations, from what pictures are coming back on Mars, everyone seems to be saying that there's something down there that looks a little strange, and they call them Mars anomalies. Sometimes when you go over Google and you can see the red, yellow boxes, they give you an opportunity to load the image. This image was taken in high resolution. They mapped out the planet in low res, and then they pasted it on top of this sphere so that you can see the ground, but it's not detailed because it gives you an obscure view. However, every now and then they give you a detailed view because sometimes the geologists want to take a look at how stuff is made and how Mars was put together, so they take a detailed view. And you can load the image and paste it on top of it, and then Google Earth will zoom in a little bit to give you a more detailed view. This is a lot more detailed than what you see on the side. Okay. But I will show you some things that just still show up on the side, even though you wouldn't normally see. What you're looking for is this. You're looking for a way to look at Mars from an objective standpoint. You're looking at a way to see how could something like this have happened over the course of time.
So right now we're inside the gash that we were.
We're on the edge of the gash, which I'll zoom out. Let me zoom out to show you where we are. I'm going to zoom out to show you how this looks. Here we are at the edge of the gas. Now everything has a name. So what you want to do is learn the names of your areas on the planet. This is called a chasma. This whole thing is called a chasma. It's 10 times deeper than the Grand Canyon. Massive.
Okay.
It might be even more than that. I mean,
10 times.
In fact, let me take a look at this. You know what? I'll even show you what they say about it. So you don't take it from me. This is the Valles Mineras. It's a so-called channels. Okay, and you can see down here all of the information on it, and they give you information on the depth. The Mesas Mineras is usually called a canyon, but the term is misleading because the canyon is so big. The canyon's Grand Canyon would be a mere crack in the sidewalk by comparison to this. That is how big that is.
If you guys ever been to the Grand Canyon, 10 times the size of that, as far as depth.
It would look like a crack. I mean, if the Grand Canyon would look like a crack compared to this, you can give you an idea of the size of this. Massive.
10 times.
Now, give you an idea. If you roll your mouse down here and you have your mouse down here, this is 16,000 feet below sea level. That's how deep that is. Now, at the top of the canyon, up here, rolling the mouse on top, that's 12,000 feet above sea level. So when this event took place, everything went from 12,000 feet above sea level to 16,000 feet below sea level. Down that hill. That is a very big hill. That's why you want to know. What they took a picture of here is really interesting. Because as you zoom into this, you'll begin to see things looking a little bit interesting. So let's just take a look at this one. This one here didn't really catch my eye. Of course there's more, but I'll show you this really quickly, which is really looking at what kind of objects from the top down could look like. Because I wanted to see, well, if there was something, maybe this was, something where this got destroyed because this is some kind of an event that took place. So let's go from the roof. We'll go from the top down, and we'll just kind of scroll down and look at how this must have all caved down. You can imagine this is like some massive cave-in, Now, as you zoom in,
it almost looks like it has a certain pattern.
Yeah, some of these have patterns of the rocks. This is what the geologists want to confirm, is that you'll see that there's patterns of the rocks, and they show you the elevation, they show you what the rocks are made of, they get an idea of what the planet was made of. This is why they go to great pains to show this. But what a lot of people do is they start scanning these areas for images that don't look like they should be in place. And one of them is kind of like this one here. Now, we're not saying that this is an object of any particular importance, but look at that right there. That's just an example of a little square that maybe could have slid down. Okay, this is okay, but this doesn't really say there was something there, but they are squares, and we do get a little bit of resolution, but let's leave that alone. Let's just zoom out, go down a little more, take a look at some other stuff to see. This is how they're doing this anomalous search, by the way. This is what these guys do. So let's zoom in a little bit more to show you here, and you'll see that this maybe not, but maybe, you never know. But you're looking at some areas that look as though it has some what they call symmetry. These are objects that look to have some sort of symmetry in design, so to speak. It's not necessarily definite buildings or what you would see, but they look out of place in that they're not matching the areas that they come in. And sometimes they're a little dark, so you can see that you need a little bit lightening on your browser to see, but you can make out what maybe could have been there. Now, you got to understand, on this slope, you're still 3,000 feet below sea level. So something is going down. Okay, this is an event that's taking place and stuff is sinking. So let's go down. And let's go down more. Was anything above there? And as you zoom into certain areas, you might not catch everything, but you start to see a little bit. Now, it gets to be a little bit too much for someone to say, this is just pure coincidence. Okay, it gets to the point. Now, this is just one photo. Now, I will assure you, this photo was taken. Now, here's a very interesting one. As you get to the bottom, what do you start to see here? Now, can you take a look at this photograph and tell me that doesn't look a little bit unusual for the general formations of all the rocks? But that's not my point. This is just the beginning.
So help me understand this, because I'm having a hard time kind of seeing. But I mean,
we're looking at logical proportions and some dimensions in terms of landscaping. You're looking at some sort of landscaping, but you're looking at destruction of landscaping. This is not something that is there today. This is something that was there a long time ago and probably demolished, obliterated, sank down to a level from 12,000 feet to 14,000 feet below sea level. You see the minus sign? 14,000 feet below sea level. Now we're looking at it from 7,000 feet above the ground. This is how high we are looking at it from our altitude. The altitude that we're looking at it from is 7,000 feet above ground. So it's 7,000 feet above ground and 14,000 feet below sea level on the planet. Where it once sat was 12,000 feet above sea level, and it, whatever happened, dropped down. But that's not the only object that people tend to look at. This is just an example, but notice how, as I zoom out, notice the surrounding areas. Notice the proportions of these dimensions. Nothing else takes that shape. It looks like a destroyed encampment or something, or building a structure or something that was just, but it went from the top down. Whatever happened quick. So this wasn't done in one time. You can clearly understand that what took place here is a major event, and it looks like this is not something ordinary. But that's not my point. Let's go over here and let's look at this. Now this, I think a lot of people would be interested to see. As you zoom into this one, I didn't even notice it at the time, but I went from the chasm all the way up the rock face because I wanted to see what was down here, if there was something down here. So let's go down to the bottom. Now we may or we may not see information with regard to how the objects look, but we're looking for landscaping that may look a little bit out of place, but not formed by the sand. Now let's understand this. You could see the rush maybe of water as this flooded and as the water settled and then went away. You could see from the sinking of the rocks and the sand. You can also see part of some areas that looked like they got washed away or washed up or something. So my conversation is to look at what evidence we may have of artificial design, not natural. I can see a lot of this is natural, but the closer you get, the more detailed you go, and the slower you sink down, the more detailed objects tend to look in the sand. And that's where people go to work. Because archaeologists do this on a daily basis. They go look at stuff underneath the ground, and they look at the patterns of the ground. It gets to be a little bit too, now look at that. Now again, this is a very detailed satellite. Like I told you, satellites have the ability to see things very close to the ground. You too can make this out. It doesn't take a genius, but that's not my point. I need more. So I'm looking for this. So I start going up this face. Let's go up the face and up the hill. If something's going to crash from the hill down, it's going to slide down the hill like everything else, and sometimes it'll maintain its form. Sometimes it'll break up. Sometimes it'll still maintain its shape. And in certain circumstances, you might be able to pick things out that didn't quite make it down that hill because they were just a little bit too large or too shaped in order to not make it down. But again, we're not the builders of this, are we? We're not the architects. What do we know from building structure? But we do know that certain things don't take shape just by accident. So let's just zoom into that maybe a little closer. No, let's zoom out and go up the hill a little more. Because I start to see a lot of anomalous stuff in this. And what gets me is this photo wasn't taken for accident. I don't believe that this photo was taken for accident. There are others looking at this too, not just us. And there's shapes all around. But this is just one, like I said, this is just one photo of many, but look at how much stuff is literally strewn around. Now what got me is this. I zoomed out a little bit and I started going up the hill. And what did I find up here? And this is where you really start. Now you really start to see things. Look at this. I didn't even see some of this. Some of this stuff I'm seeing for the first time, to be honest. To be honest, if you're really looking at structure, to see structure from this kind of a distance, something didn't make it down that hill. Something here kind of just sunk down off of this ledge. It could appear to be that way, but as you scroll across this and go up into this little corner over here, when you see something like this, you have to pause.
Okay.
Now, we could zoom into that, but looking at that from here, it still doesn't look like it's an ordinary rock face. You see what I'm talking about? If you examine this from the top down, this sits at 9,000 feet below sea level. We're looking at it from 7,000 feet in the air. So it's 9,000 feet at sea level, 9,000 feet below sea level. This could have very well been, this object is what I'm talking about, could literally have been on the surface, but it probably dropped down from the surface. And it may have been sitting on the surface where all of this land once sat. But all of everything from here down just got crashed in. So when I slide between this hill, it motivates me because I believe what I'm looking at here is not a natural formation when I zoom into that. Everything else looks natural. The hills, they look natural. The two hills, I can clearly see that. Oh, I can clearly see too that there was some mudslides. I can see that. There was some mudslides. There was water. Probably water came down. And, you know, it's honest to say, if something's destroyed, you know, you're going to get a lot of water coming down here. So water comes down. And water comes down. But as water comes down and it goes over this hill, why would you have that kind of a shape on that hill? And it's clearly definable around the other objects. You can make it out. Your eyes are led towards that object.
The shape here.
That's right. Your eyes are drawn to that because the shining and the light and the way that the shadows hit it in a way that do not speak to natural rock formation. Now, it may be an anomaly, but what's up with the triangle, which you're starting to see here? And then you also see a little bit of shoulder space. And if you make this out clean enough, you're starting to see some other objects right behind this. So this is something that either fell, got embedded into the dirt as it went down, sank into the mud, and as the water ran off of it, the shades of what it once was come to light. And if this was something that you could look at, there's more. And that's what leads me to look for more, because that doesn't look ordinary to me. It doesn't. It just doesn't. And then you start to see other things, don't you? Because what you're starting now to notice is that these are shapes. These are shapes. Now, we don't know what the shapes are, but if you really want to get to know what that might look like, because we got to put a face to the name. A face to the name. There's objects down here in Pumapunku clearly destroyed, clearly cut out of the rock, cut right out of the rock face, clearly designed, and most likely designed by individuals that were here, in my opinion. Now again, this is my opinion. I'm just going to go off on a ledge here and say this is probably where the tools were created to do this. And the reason I say that is because of what these other guys are finding. I'm zooming out now to show you from where it was and where I went to look, because I went to look right in the heart of destruction. If you're going to destroy something and obliterate something, why not just do something like that? Take it all away. So everything must be underneath here. And they're finding a lot of things in here, which is what brings me to this, which is this last photograph. They have a number for it. I'm going to type it in here because I have it in my computer here. This is called PA7, PA1. I'm going to go here. We'll scroll up and down just to get an idea. Notice some of the objects in this photo here. You can see from these rocks over here, they tend to look a little anomalous. I'll just say anomalous to say the least, okay? That's all I'm saying in terms of the way they look. Now, if we go a little closer, you're still not losing resolution, okay? You're still looking at these objects. Now, as we scroll across, you're seeing more of these objects. But if you notice, these are gray, these are brown. These are not the same as those guys. It doesn't add up. And anyone who looks at these can kind of give you an idea of what you may see in terms of what they look like. The gray rocks or the gray objects look like ruins. They look like something that was destroyed. And you can see the shapes of them. They all tend to look like they have shape. That does not look like a natural formation. This is just my thinking from what you're seeing here. And you can compare these to the Puma Punku site and see clearly there's evidence of some sort of shaping. Artificial shaping. It's not that difficult to see. That's what sparks my interest. That's just the beginning. But what really grabs me is when you see things that they just can't catch. And honestly, you want to know that they're trying to find as much as possible about this planet and the sea. But up here, you'll see that things just get a little bit too anomalous when you see objects that look like that right there. And that's what sparks my interest in a lot of ways. That does not look natural. However, we still don't have enough information, and I will still say that. That still can be argued to be of some sort of natural erosion. It can be argued.
It looks like a face to me.
Yes, it does. And it can be argued that it's just a natural formation because of the way it sits. There's too much shadow in here. But what leads me to believe, why is there shadow in there when there's no shadow here? And there's not that much shadow here or here or here or here. Why is there a shadow just right there where you might see another eye or the second half of the face? It seems to me that that's a little too dark to really get a full, clear vision. Which is why you would argue that that's a natural rock formation. You would argue that because you would say that that's just an image illusion. It's giving the illusion of that. However, it can be argued that it is a natural rock formation because of the way that erosion takes place. But Mars has no atmosphere, so why would there be erosion at all anyway? It's not like Earth. Earth has erosion because we have weather. Mars doesn't have weather, so why would that be a natural erosion anyway?
Right. That's
a logical conclusion from someone who would look at that, knowing what you would know from the planet. Every single day, they download pictures every day. What'sUpInTheSky.com is someone that I have learned to look at and look at, and that individual, can help you out,
All right, I think we're gonna end it on this, man. All right, guys. Look, hey, I don't think we've made any claims here. I think we've just looked at the information and allow you to have the tools to be able to come to your own conclusion.
You see what you see, I see what I see.
What do you guys see? Let us know. Comment, like, and share this with a friend. Start the dialogue. We'd appreciate that.
If you want to know your history, then go find it.
Thank you, Mr. Giles. My name is Dale Culver. This has been a very exciting episode of What the Deal, Dale. I hope you enjoyed it. Until next time.